Welcome back. It's Tim and Julie Harris. And yes, we are in an undisclosed location up in a mountain somewhere in the Great Smoky Mountains. And I can see, Julie, as I look out the window, the red wasps are back. I can see them
I
outside of our
know.
windows.
I heard them buzzing around earlier.
Yes, so we are up on our little cabin up in Appalachia somewhere for spring break. So yes, wish us luck that the bears and the red wasps don't get us. So we are focusing on podcasting this week around topics that were based on questions that we had from all of you guys in Instagram. And I'm going to start out by explaining, and I know, Julie, this isn't perfectly in alignment with the podcast notes, but it'll be useful anyway. So
Sure.
I had a call from a coaching client that I've coached on and off for the last 20 years. And this is somebody who I started out with when he was a new agent, and he was, he had a lot of good, I would say, potential and talent, but he didn't have
Hmm.
any skill. So over the decades, he learned skill, and he learned to be very consistent, build a very successful listings-based business. But it was funny. He would essentially, our coaching relationship had like he would have me coach him for a year or two, and then he would take it, like 6 months or a year off. And every time he showed back up in my schedule, it was always when he was slacking or always when he was slipping and he was starting to need a confidence boost again. So I
Hmm.
had this call with him last week, and the call was essentially like, I don't know if I've got this. I'm interpreting for the sake of brevity what he was saying. He was
Hmm.
worried that he lost his edge. He was worried that, somehow the technological train had left the station, and now because he wasn't all over all the latest, greatest AI stuff, that somehow that was the reason why he was no longer able to take 9 or 10 out of 10 listing appointments he went on. I mean, this guy was SEAL Team 6 level skill when it came to taking listing appointments, setting listing appointments, pre-qualifying, and, following our 7-step listing process.
Hmm.
Well, I knew this guy well enough, and I know all of our coaching clients, especially our long-term elite coaching clients, well enough that I knew what he was probably doing is he's just gotten complacent or lazy on the process. And it's easy to do. I mean, if you got so when you get to the top levels of learning, it's called unconscious competence, where you no longer have to think about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. Whatever kind of spews from your mouth, it just sounds amazing. A lot of you guys have that level of skill, especially those of you who've been with us for a long time. Well, he had it too, but what he did is he made the fatal mistake of being at that level is he stopped trying to improve. He became complacent. And so he stopped doing all the things necessary. And so I had him write down for me, this was his homework. I had him write down for me what he was doing he had a listing appointment, like maybe 2 listing appointments after our call. And I want him to write down for me all the tiny little micro steps that he was doing before, during, and after the listing appointment. Like I want to
Sure.
know
Like what his process was, basically.
well, I want to know how much he deviated from the process that he had learned in coaching with
Hmm.
me. That's what I was after. So, long story short, I found out that he had indeed started. Well, he was skipping all of what I would determine to be some of the most important steps of the pre-listing, and then during the listing appointment, and
Hmm.
just little things that I don't need to bore all of you guys with. But the point of it is that the reason that somebody consistently wins at a high level, or somebody wins now and then, or someone frankly never wins, and this is when competing for a listing, is because they don't, or never will understand the importance of operating at the highest level, but you have to know what you're supposed to be doing at the highest level. So it's one thing to say, I'm operating at the highest level, but if you've never had somebody come in and watch you or monitor you or really coach and train you at the highest level to know, you know what, Julie, when you knocked on that door, what was your next step? What did you do? Well, I knocked on the door. I rang the doorbell. Right. Well, what did you do after that? Well, I just stood there. Okay. So did you take a step back? Or Julie, when you pulled when you pulled up to the street, when you were on the street, did you park in the street or did you park in the driveway? So all these things, and we're going to walk you guys through what we feel to be some of the biggest infractions. Well, we're going to tell you guys about the process. We're going to tell you the sins you're never supposed to commit. It's called the 10 must-do habits before every listing appointment. But then what we're going to do is we want you to actually expand your thinking and realize how important these little things are. Because at the end of the day, most of the accumulation of all the things that we're going to tell you, and this is just an overview from our podcast, right?
Hmm.
But the accumulation of everything that we teach you guys in Premier Coaching, it amounts to something really, truly spectacular that makes you different. And after you go on a listing appointment or after you come in contact with a potential seller, the seller is going to go, I don't know why that, Bob was so different. There was something about him. And it's because, there's something different about the way Bob carried himself, something different about the way Bob was asking questions, and just the whole exchange was operating at a different level. Everybody, you know, dear listener or dear viewer, if you're watching us on YouTube, you know the difference between dealing with someone that's truly a professional and someone that's trying to hack something together. So, you know, and one of the surest signs that someone's being lazy or doesn't even know what to do, it doesn't even know they're being lazy, frankly, is if they try to fake friend somebody to get an appointment where
True.
they'll try to bond with them. You guys hear that a lot, right? You try to bond with people. People know when you're fake friending them or you're trying to bond with them just for the sake of they feel manipulated.
Well,
That is what
even
they
even if you really are friends, those friends will be mad because you took advantage of their friendship. So I think there's two versions of that. That's fake friend of a colder lead, right? We just have to build rapport and then everything will be easy. And then there's the real friend that feels like you didn't treat them in the same professional way.
Yeah, well, to Julie's point, and that's the other thing that a lot of people do, especially because after 5 years, if you most agents get 61. Am I saying that right, Julie?
I think that's right.
61%.
Yep.
61% of all their business from past client centers of influence. And again, those are the ones that we have a tendency to take the most for granted because we just assume we have the business. And it's in a market like this when those folks are making you compete and you might not even know you're competing. You've
That's
got an
right.
appointment with someone you've listed and sold houses for in the past and you just assume it's a layup for you. You don't send a pre-listing pack, you don't pre-qualify, you don't show up on time, and they end up listing with somebody else and you don't know why. And you then make up excuses. You don't want to essentially take that as an opportunity for you to learn. So you might say, well, the other agent overpriced it, or they cut their commission, or they somehow have a better
It's an
relationship with them.
external excuse, right?
Right.
I would agree with you that to take people back to the call you were just talking about, it's interesting because I think that the more experienced agents tend to think that it's an exterior thing. It's because I'm not doing enough videos or I'm not using AI like somebody else is. It's not their first thought because they have been successful in the past isn't to look inward, it's to look outward. And this is also a very common reason that you had a returning client. It's also a very common reason that people come to coaching is maybe the first time they think it's a fluke, but if it happens a second or third time, they just have this sense like they're off their game somehow and they're not sure exactly what it is. And
You
that's a
mean
great
losing?
reason to come to coaching. Go ahead.
You mean like losing a listing appointment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or and a second one and a third one or one that you
Right.
thought for sure that you had. Those are the painful ones.
Right. So look, that's the reason that we're doing this call today and we're doing this podcast today. So please do definitely grab these notes because Julie's taken a lot of time. These are all the notes you guys are given when you download or when you subscribe to the newsletter, and that's just from today. So we do write long form notes because we know a lot of you are using this for your own training, education. A lot of you guys are using this for maybe training and educating agents in your team or your brokerage. So to get the newsletter, you have to go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. It is our free newsletter, and the newsletter again is the only place where you're going to be able to download all of our notes for free. harrisrealestatedaily.com. And you have to drop in your email address, then pop over to your email, and then you have to double opt in. You're off to the races. And by the way, we had a huge success. I'm not saying I don't think I was necessarily surprised, but we had 2 masterminds in the last 7 days, and we had a combination of close to 2,000 of you attend. So we're going to be doing, obviously, that's something that you want us doing more of. So we're going to be doing another invite-only mastermind, invite only to the people in our newsletter. So if you want to attend the next mastermind that we're doing, I'll tell you guys a shortcut if you just want to sign up. Just go to Join Premier. I forget if it's, you know what? I think it's joinpremiercoaching.com. Yeah, it is. It's joinpremiercoaching.com. That's the link to sign up for the mastermind. This is the first time I've shared it. Like I said, if you want to just get a proper invitation, subscribe to our newsletter at harrisrealestatedaily.com. Drop in your email address, double subscribe. You're off to the races. All right, Julie Harris, let's get rolling.
Yes. Okay. So nail the first impressions, 10 must-do habits before every listing appointment. In real estate, your listing appointment doesn't start when you sit down at the kitchen table. It starts the moment that the client hears your door shut. First impressions aren't just lasting, they're decisive. And sellers are observing everything. Whether you realize it or not, consciously, subconsciously, they're absolutely observing everything. Your timing, your professionalism, your energy. If you want to increase your chances of winning the listing, these 10 simple habits will give you the serious edge. And I also would say, and I think you would agree with this, Tim, as we present these, any of these 10 things not done at the highest level can lose you the listing. And sometimes you fall into the trap of having more than one of these problems go wrong. So, I think sometimes people will think, well, you're just being very particular. Well, sellers are very particular. Remember, your average commission right now It's like $12,000. That's real money. And their situation is very real to them. You've got to accomplish the job that they need you to help them with. So yes, they are paying attention. And Tim, you were talking about earlier when sellers choose you, their feedback won't necessarily be, well, I'm not listing with Bob or Betty because they were 5 minutes late. It's because I just didn't feel as comfortable as I did with Sue, who called me to confirm the appointment. She just seemed more professional. They might say, I felt a better vibe with them. Sometimes it's intellectual, but a lot of times it's a feeling that is the result of you doing these 10 things right.
Well, let's start out with that, Julie. You have your first point. It show up on time, or better yet, early. But I'm going to add something to Julie. This is a part of the preamble. Energy and enthusiasm, even if you lack skill,
It can be nervous energy and enthusiasm. That's okay.
but energy and enthusiasm oftentimes will be 90% of the decision-making process. Well, I'll say 75% of the decision-making process for a seller when choosing the agent they're going to hire. And if you are way too introverted, have low energy and enthusiasm, don't look or don't sound, don't feel like you really give a hoot about whether you get the listing, let alone getting it sold, they won't list with you. They'll end up listing with somebody who's just basically bouncing off the walls, energetic, enthusiastic. They love, love, love the house, the whole thing, right? So remember that one of the most important sales skills, and it's easy, even if you aren't naturally very gregarious and demonstrative, you're not just really expressive, that doesn't matter. You need to learn how to act like you have energy and enthusiasm, because that is it's a subconscious way that they decide whether or not they want to work with you. And even if they're more introverted in nature, I'm not saying bounce off the walls with somebody who's like very introverted in their nature. You want to, obviously, tone it down. And so you're dealing with them on the way that they want to be dealt with, more low energy, but you can have lower energy and talk slower, but still have energy and enthusiasm in the way and you speak and the confidence that you have in the words that you choose and all the rest of it. And this all comes with skill, but I'm hoping you're understanding that none of these points make a difference if you're showing up, like a sloth and you're not showing
sound
up
like somebody that they would want to do business with,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Easily
sellers
said.
sellers would say, they believed, we used to hear this all the time. It seemed like you were the only one who really believed in my house. And I thought, well, how do you believe in a house? It's what you're talking about, is having enthusiasm. You can see there, the seller can see that you can sell it because you believe in it. You're not like, oh God, you got to replace this wallpaper. This is terrible.
Well, I remember a listing appointment I didn't take. And then the reason was that I called the seller up and I lost it to an agent who I'd never even heard of before. And that's what you just said is exactly what the lady said. No, it was a man. But I remember it left an indelible scar.
Right.
He said, I just thought the other agent believed in my house more. Now, what was that all about? It's because when I was at the house, I was probably tired. I was probably, being too presumptive. I was, after all, the number one, this and the other thing. And so I didn't really show up with that level of energy and enthusiasm. And that was enough for him not to want to list with me, even though our sales record was, 1,000+ homes and we had all this,
Sure.
fancy stuff, and it doesn't matter.
How do you think we know all this stuff?
Exactly.
We lived it, right?
Right.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
Julie,
Okay, well, let's jump into our points, okay?
Yeah.
All right, number one, show up on time, or better yet, early. You're being judged before you knock on the door. Showing up on time or arriving 10 or 15 minutes early, it tells the seller that you're dependable, that you're respectful, and that you're organized. And some sellers, this is a really big deal. This could be like a deal killer. Some people are very sensitive to being on time, okay? And just assume that they are. Don't be like, oh, well, I was late when I called them before. They'll be okay. Just assume everybody cares. So it also shows that you prepare mentally, you review your notes, you avoid looking rushed. People form impressions of others within the first 7 seconds, and punctuality sends a loud, clear signal that you're a professional who is on the ball. Running late, on the other hand, creates an unnecessary doubt of you before you've even started. Anything you want to add to that, Tim?
Well, I remember you and I went on a listing appointment together, and this is an upper end listing appointment, and we were the third of a gaggle of really very successful competitive agents that the seller had called out to have all of us basically, go in the gladiator ring to try to win his listing. And I remember that he was monitoring and writing down. Now, we didn't know this, but you and I were smart enough to know to show up early. And he basically told us after he decided to list the house with us that even hearing these types of comments really still to this day kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you, because we
Yep.
had a fancy pre-listing pack and we had all this fancy stuff and all the rest of it. And he said, well, I chose you guys because you're the only ones that showed up on time. As a matter of fact, you were early. Those were the exact words that he said. And it's
Yep.
like, oh, it's so annoying, but it
I
takes me.
know, but you know what? I can remember his yellow legal pad to this day because he was the one that we both remember because he was so obvious about this. And I remember the appointment was at 5 o'clock, and I remember we showed up, and the first thing he did was write down that we showed up at like 4:55 or something, and then right above that, the other agent was at like 5:08. It wasn't even like they were an hour late. This was like his thing. So just assume, err on the side of being on time. And those of you who live in like, we have coaching clients that are in LA, right? I don't know how you guys ever figure out how long it's going to take to go anywhere. Just give yourself extra time. Use your nav. You know, the navigation can now account for traffic and all of the things. So just be careful with that. All right. So show up on time.
Point number two, park like a pro. Now, this is a very simple point, but here's the gist of it. Don't block their driveway. And Julie's got some great points that she wrote down, but do not park in their driveway. Now,
Why?
well, it's because what happens is, let's say, for example, it's a man and a wife, or it's two owners or whatever, and you park in the driveway. And the other owner is, your appointment's at 6 o'clock. The other one's getting home at 6:30. You've now parked them out of their driveway, or you've parked them from getting into their garage or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's an interesting subconscious sign of respect that if you don't park in their driveway. I know there are exceptions. Sometimes you can't street park, or it's, whatever. Don't hear what I'm saying and then not understand the meaning of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is simply, you're going to show them the respect of not parking in their driveway. And I got a little advanced coaching here for you. You can even say that to them. So listen, I didn't park in your driveway because I didn't wanted to make sure I wasn't blocking anybody. And here's the other side. What if, for example, you did park behind somebody and that you're, doing your cat and monkey show with regards to your listing presentation, and the person you are now blocking to the driveway has to leave, and now
Yep.
you're going to have to get up and move your car, and you've lost
It's
your
awkward.
mojo. Right. So that should make sense. All right, Julie, point number three, master the handshake.
Yes. Okay. And we talked about this in our Harris Rules book a little bit too. Your handshake does matter. It should be firm, confident, and sincere, not crushing and not limp. People draw conclusions about your confidence, your warmth, and your trustworthiness in an instant. So practice it if you need to. You can practice this with a friend. The right handshake sets the tone for everything that follows. And again, here's a little spot where it could be kind of awkward and weird if you haven't practiced it. Simple to fix.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, again, Julia, let me ask you from a female's perspective, what's the deal with shaking hands as a woman? Because sometimes there's like, and I know, again, this changes depending on the age. I mean, just being real here, right? The
Mm-hmm.
age of the woman, where in the country you are, and there's all these little manipulative things. It goes with men and women when it comes to handshaking. And then there's the shaking of the hand and putting your hand on the arm, or there's the shaking of your hand and turning the other person's hand over.
There's a lot to it. There's like,
Well, but there isn't that much to it, really. I mean, so from a female's perspective, there shouldn't be that much to it. It's a
right.
firm handshake and then it's over with. But
That's
from
right.
but
That's
from
how
a
it should be.
from a female's perspective, talk about that for the maybe younger women listening that are still trying to understand the proper, I think, classy way to go about presenting themselves with a handshake. What do you suggest?
Well, okay, so you should always offer your hand. Now, during COVID, that was a different thing, but now that we're all over that, you should always offer your hand to shake. Whether even if they seem like that's not what they're expecting, I'll tell you, when you dress professionally, it's a lot easier. They expect you to shake their hand, and you should follow the not limp and not crushing. Okay, from the opposite perspective, women really don't like it when men, because we have men listeners, right? Don't crush people's hands as a power play. Everybody knows that's what you're doing. Nobody likes it. It's uncomfortable and it causes a jerk reaction to pull your hand away. You don't want that when you're meeting somebody. So again, you can practice this. I think there's even TED Talks on how to properly shake hands, right? But from a female perspective, yes, dress professionally so that the handshake is expected. Practice it, quick, firm handshake, and then you're done. That's
And
it.
if you linger too long as a man or a woman doing the handshaking thing, you're going to start basically conveying some vibes that you don't necessarily want
Yeah,
to. And it's funny that
exactly.
we wrote about this in our book, Harris Rules. You guys can get that everywhere, and online, offline bookstores and everywhere. But the history of shaking hands goes back to one warrior proving to the other that he doesn't have a secret weapon, that he's not hiding something in his hand. And that's the same reason that people wave, just to show that they're like, I have no weapon. I'm a
Not throwing
friend.
anything at you.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's kind of funny. But that's a micro point that if you
Mhm.
do it wrong, if you come off real wristed, and I mean, you guys again could do your own homework on this, but just do your homework on this. Join Premier Coaching. Understand that when we're expecting you, when you're in Premier Coaching, we're expecting you to really be ready to become the best version of yourself as a real estate practitioner. And we know you love the content from this podcast because literally thousands of you listen every single day. Premier Coaching is this podcast times about 100 or even more, really. Because again, when you join Premier Coaching, we want you to win consistently at the highest level in the shortest period of time. And everything we do in Premier Coaching is designed around getting you to the point where you are operating on that unconscious competence phase with the maximum level of energy and enthusiasm, and you never have to think about it. It just happens intuitively. So you definitely want to join Premier Coaching. Just go to premiercoaching.com. Again, just go to premiercoaching.com, and you can join Premier right now and get access to the entire level, the entire first level, and that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with a Harris certified coach. Look, guys, there's no reason not to do this. There are no contracts. There's no gotchas. The first level Premier Coaching, where it's pretty incredible. Your real estate treasure map, a lot of the scripts and the objection handlers, things that you're looking for. So definitely go to premiercoaching.com and join right away. All right, Julie, let's go to point number 4.
Point number 4 is to respect their space. If there's a shoe rack by the door, follow their lead and take off your shoes.
Let's stop there. Let's
Yeah.
debate that, okay?
Sure.
So I've had a lot of people that told me they never take their shoes off, and let's do the history on that, okay?
Okay.
Just so they can understand our perspective. We think you should always take your shoes off unless they insist that you leave them on, because I'll give you a little secret. If they're insisting that you leave your shoes on, there's probably a really damn good reason that they want you to leave your shoes on. And it might just be because they know the house is a pigsty, or maybe those types of issues. Now, that'll never happen. But if you walk into a house and they're not wearing shoes, you have to take your shoes off. And to easily summarize this point, I want you to think about it. You're wearing heels and you're clipping around the house and you sound like a Clydesdale, and everyone else is in socks and it's hard surface floors, right? You're going to sound, you obviously are some sort of intruder. You're making everybody uncomfortable.
Right.
And if there are no shoes type house, that's probably a good sign that they're going to keep a very a clean house. And here you are basically not respecting the environment. That little tiny stupid thing, it's going to be enough for you to either get the listing or not get the listing. And Julie's smiling because we took listings because of this, but I know the story she wants to tell about when we walked into our first higher end listing and the lady checked to see what kind of shoes you were wearing.
Yeah, and that wasn't the only time that I noticed that. So ladies and men too, probably they check your brand name. I always had like Coach or Ferragamo brand showing up after I noticed that. That's an easy way to be competitive. They're just, if that's their thing, that's their thing. It's the same as having nice nails and signing with a good pen. Err on the side of being professional. So respect their space. Now, if you're walking through a rehab and there's ladders everywhere, probably you want to wear your shoes, but otherwise err on the side of respecting their floors. The other reason to do this, whether you're at a beach town or you're in the Midwest where you get weather all the time, sellers, especially if they have light colored floors, they do not want to have sand tracked in. They don't want mud tracked in. They don't want to have to clean up after you leave. So little thing, but a big thing.
And Julie,
Okay.
don't step on your point number 10, because that's where you're starting to meander in your point number 10, which is a really good point. All right, point number 5. And this
Point
is
number
what
5 we talked about.
Huh?
Bringing good energy to their home,
Yeah.
being professional and warm. The only thing I wanted to add to that is
Well,
if
hold
they
on,
like
Julie.
something, you love it. Go
So
ahead.
point number 5 was bring positive energy, and that's basically energy and enthusiasm. And Julie just started to touch on something that's really critical. Go ahead, Julie.
Well, so maybe you're not in love with their decor, but that chandelier that you're thinking is kind of ew, maybe they got that from some town in Italy and they're so attached to that and they think it's the most beautiful thing ever. So if they like it, you love it. During the listing presentation is not the time to go into the whole decor comment unless they bring it up, excuse me, and they're like, what do you think I should do about this? And help me stage. That's different. But
So-
otherwise, you want to, if they're into it, then you love it. We sold a lot of houses. There was like, this bespoke wallpaper that we never would have done, but they loved it and the feedback was fine. So you don't have to go down that rabbit hole every time.
Well, here's the rule, okay? If they like it, you love it. And if they don't like it, you still love it. In other words, you never have a negative thing to say about anything. Now that should be obvious on a listing appointment, but how many of you guys are walking when you're walking into houses with buyers and you're being critical of what you see? You've got to keep your yap shut. You're the biggest reason why you're not selling more houses, because you're saying things that you don't realize are railroading your potential success. You walk into a house and there's something about it, maybe an odd smell or something else that you find offensive personally, and you say you found it offensive personally, but then you later find out that that wallpaper that you were just commenting on is the same wallpaper that their grandma, who they dearly loved, gave, whatever, right? You guys get it? You can fall into so many landmines just because you think your opinion matters. I'm not trying to offend you. I'm trying to make a point. When you're working with sellers and buyers for that matter, your job is to not be a decorator, not be a home inspector, not be any of those things. Your job is to keep your mouth shut and stay out of the way and listen and ask questions. If you see them, placing furniture when you're working with buyers, that's a buyer sign. Learn our buyer scripts that we teach you in Premier Coaching so you know how to get the contract signed, know how to ask for the sale. But the moral of the story is when you're working with sellers in particular, I'll give you guys another little suggestion. Do not start decorating the house for them. If you walk into the house and there's too much furniture, which is always the case, there's just too much junk, they're mild level hoarders, do not say anything. Do not say a damn thing that's going to be negative about the house, because that will be enough of a reason for them not to list the house with you. And I'm not saying lie to them about condition or lie to them about anything. Just I'm saying keep your mouth shut. Your job is to help them understand why you're the best person for them to be their listing agent, not for you to go in there and trip over. Our listing process is very succinct. And there's nothing in our listing process about you going in there and being a home inspector or a home decorator or being identify the odor, the strange odor person or anything like that. A lot of you guys fall into those traps because you're trying to prove your value, but what you're really doing is you're talking yourself out of the listing. So if you have gone on listing appointments, you've not taken the listing, and you're thinking to yourself, you beat your head against the wall trying to help them position the house and do all these other things before you had the listing contract signed, you're the reason you didn't get that listing, because somebody else came in, had nothing negative to say, got the contract signed. Then what they may have done is they may have sent in, depending on the price range, if the numbers made sense, a home stager.
Stager, yep.
A stager, which you can pay a flat fee to, and they'll go in there. You give the stager a little list ahead of time. This is what we did on our upper end listings, and all of our top coaching clients do too. You give the stager a list of the things that you saw that you knew the house needed. You don't want to be the bearer of bad news. You want them to love you and list the house with you. You give the stager the bearer of the bad news. The stager then goes in there, and they're the ones that are going to tell the seller what needs to be changed about the house. And here's the strange thing. When you're the one, and I don't understand the psychology behind this, but it is what it is. When you're the one that's delivering the bad news for the seller, they will be mad at you. They won't list the house with you. They'll resent you. But they list the house with you, and then you send in a stager. They just do whatever the hell the stager says and just knock the list out. It's so strange human behavior. I have no idea why.
That's right. If you try to do it during the listing appointment, they'll just think that you didn't like their house.
Exactly. And you're breaking one of the previous rules of having high levels of energy and enthusiasm. You can't have high levels of energy and enthusiasm at the same time telling them that all their bore head mounts on the wall in their bedroom is not something that you think people would really want. You guys getting my point? Trying to make
Not
you
that
laugh.
we've ever seen that before.
No, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 6, and I want you to talk about this because I think that this happens sometimes with women, but more often with men. Rule number 6 is don't assume the head of the table. When it's time to sit down and talk, don't just take the power seat. I know that some people teach you that you should always have the head of the table, but it's better to just ask, where do you usually sit, and follow their lead. They'll be a lot more comfortable. It also shows respect, and it makes the client feel comfortable and in control in their own home without you having to give up any authority because you bothered to ask them where they typically sit.
All right. So here's what Julie was just alluding to. Let's assume the table is a rectangle, right? And let's assume, just bear with me here, listeners, don't be triggered. Let's assume the man sits at the head of the table, and let's say the wife sits over here traditionally, or maybe she sits over here or whatever, right? They very rarely, unless it's usually if that's the way it's set, the tables sit. Sometimes people sit across from each other. Okay, what you want to do if one of them normally sits here and one of them normally sits here, you want to sit here. Okay, because you want to have them both between you and the person who's the decision maker. You want to do your best to have that person in front of you. And I'll give you guys a little secret. In real estate, most cases, like over 90%, the woman is the decision maker. Even if the man tries to act like he is, the
Yep.
woman's the one making the decision who's going to be the agent for them for hiring. This reasons so many really amazingly successful real estate ladies, or real estate agents who are ladies, because they know this. And so you want to have the person who's making the decision. Now, if there's two of you, you sit here and you have the other person sit here, or you sit here, you have the person sit here. You want to make it so you don't want to be split. You don't want one of them here and one of them here. In other words, now some of you guys are listening and you're going, what is Tim saying? What I'm trying to say is don't sit between them. And if you can, don't ever sit in opposition to them. So don't sit across the table. Don't sit in between them. Because what you're trying to do, and follow our listing process, what you'll do successfully, is you don't want to make yourself feel adversarial to them. You represent stress. You represent something that is bringing a lot of potential threat vectors into their lives. And so if you sit across from them, the whole psychology of sitting across from them, it's subconscious. Remember, we told you guys it's the little nuanced differences that makes the difference. They're going to not feel comfortable with you. As you could be the best salesperson ever, and they're still not going to feel comfortable with you because you are in opposition to them physically. You're literally in opposition to them. Now, if it's a round table, it's a hell of a lot easier. And always sit at their kitchen table, assuming they have a kitchen table. You sit where they normally sit. Don't sit in the family room. Don't sit in a couch or a Barco lounger or whatever the hell it is. Sit where they have meals. Sit where they go to have important conversations. That's where you want to go. And don't sit yourself in opposition to them. Hopefully I made my point. The main thing is what you're really trying to create, and what you will literally say in our listing presentation is that, Julie's the seller. Julie, here's the thing. It's you and me, and we are a team, and we are essentially dealing with the nature of the market together. I'm not working against you. I'm working for you, and I'm working beside you. That's kind of the psychology I want them to have.
We're on the same team.
We're on the same team. And you don't want them having, like, when it comes to pricing and it comes to all the other things that are, we cover in the listing process and the pre-listing pack, if you are talking with them about pricing and you didn't follow our listing presentation and you went there not knowing what they already thought the house was worth ahead of time. That's one of our questions in the pre-qualifying script, by the way. I'm not going to go through it now, but you have to join Premier Coaching to get full access to that. But if you did walk into the house without knowing what the seller already thought the house was worth, you're probably not going to take the listing because you've essentially set yourself up for failure. But if you have all the questions answered from our pre-qualifying process, which is step 2 in the 7-step listing process, the probability of you not taking that listing after you deliver the pre-listing pack, after you show up early, after you've done all the other things, the probability of you not taking that listing is 0, because you have essentially eliminated all the threat vectors and all the objections that the seller might ever have. Objections come in 2 forms: the ones they think and never tell you, or the ones that they ask you. So the ones that they ask, for every one objection a seller gives you, there's 20 that they think of that they never actually tell you. You guys understand? And those are the things that when you're following our listing process, we are covering the bases of eliminating the objections that they say, or the ones that they think before they even think them, let alone before they even say them. That's called being fully prepared.
And using the pre-listing package takes care of a lot of those problems.
Our pre-listing pack that you get in Premier Coaching basically is your silent salesperson. Yeah. It's incredible, honestly.
It handles the objections before you get there so that you don't have to. And
Right.
I got to say, and you'll remember this, when we had that aha moment, oh, you mean you can handle objections before you show up? The presentation becomes so much easier. They are ready to sign with you. All you have to do is show up, maybe talk about price a little bit, be enthusiastic, talk about things in their house, what their situation is, their timing, go over all of those things, and then close and you're done. It's so much easier than thinking you're going to present and then living in fear. I know agents, we talk to agents all the time. I don't want to hear objections at the end. I feel like they're not paying attention to me because they're holding on to their objections. But now we're talking about pre-listing package. So let's move on. Okay.
Right. Julie, we need to do a podcast on the pre-listing package, or not the pre-listing package, but we should do a podcast on the seller pre-qualification script. But guys, you get the pre-listing package with Premier Coaching, especially when you go VIP. And literally Premier Coaching is a done for you, complete A to Z sales system, from lead generation, pre-qualifying. And this isn't just for sellers. We're focused on on sellers today, but it's for sellers and for buyers. All right. So the next one is this point number 7. Hopefully you're getting our notes at harrisrealestatedaily.com. This is an easy one to say yes to, but you'd be surprised how often you guys will offend someone if you say no. Always say yes to the cookies or whatever else they're offering you, assuming it's not an illicit drug or alcohol.
That's right. Coffee, water, cookies, baked goods. If the seller offers you a refreshment, just say yes. Accepting hospitality builds connection. It might feel small to you, but people really feel good when their gestures are appreciated. Say thank you, mean it, and move on confidently. They might have spent the whole afternoon baking for you. So don't be like, oh no, I'm good.
Well, I found this out the hard way, as most things. That's how I learned most of the things in life. Is basically some people are so the offering and the eating of food is such a, is a way for people to feel connected.
Yes.
And this goes back to like cavemen, I suppose, or even maybe even before that. That there's something innately human about being offered something and saying yes, and being very appreciative of it, especially if that person made it. And there's such a deep rooted feeling of rejection if you're offered something and you say no to them, even if they say, okay, well, whatever, you didn't think it mattered. It freaking mattered, and you probably just cost yourself the listing because you didn't eat the damn cookie.
That's right. Do you remember the listing presentation that we went on? I think you'll remember because I'll give you a hint. We still own the home that we bought on a guaranteed sale, where we went to, it was Matt and Shelley, where they made an entire dinner for us and showed us what had to be at least 1,000 pictures from their cruise and their newly created baby's nursery. And I think we must have been there like 4 or 5 hours. And we still own that house to this day. Do you remember that? That was like the longest listing presentation.
I do.
In the history of listings.
That was they didn't buy that house from us originally. They listed it with us, and then they ended up buying something else with us. And I think they did another real estate deal after that.
Very sweet couple, but they were all about, breaking bread together. And had we been like, oh no, we gotta be out of here in 30 minutes. I don't know that they would have listed with us because they were so keyed on doing that, and they're very sweet people. So anyway.
Yeah. But even if you have people that are very, amiable like that, you still want to send your pre-listing pack. You still want to pre-qualify. You still don't want to show up ill-prepared. You still want to know all the questions, the pre-qualification scripts before the questions in the script before you go out. Absolutely. All right, Julie, point number 8 is send a thank you note.
Yes. Is this old school? Maybe, but effective? Absolutely. Send a handwritten thank you note, whether you win the listing or not. Most agents won't bother, which makes you stand out. Remember, we said at the top of the pod, you're competing from the moment the person is the lead until you are at the closing table. So do send the thank you card. You can say, I appreciate your time. It leaves the door open even if you didn't take the listing. It could be the deciding factor. If it's between Betty and Bob and you were the one that sent that thank you card and you followed up with a phone call, maybe that's the reason you took the listing.
But let's take a half step back. You send the thank you card. Julie said it. You send the thank you card, whether you took the listing at the time of the listing, which is what we want you to do. The likelihood of you getting the listing, if you don't take the listing when you go out on the appointment, and we teach you to do a 1-stop listing appointment and a 2-stop listing appointment, because sometimes in different parts of the country, 2 stops are the way everyone does it. So to do a 1-stop is unexpected, but we'll teach you both systems. But when you're in a situation like that, you always send a thank you card, whether you took the listing or you didn't take the listing. And I'll tell you what Julie and I used to do. And we have, all of our top coaching clients do this too for the last, we've been coaching longer than we sold real estate. We sold real estate for a little less than 10 years. We've coached for over 20. So we have them send flowers. And that's another thing that is a great differentiator. Whether you take the listing or not, you always send flowers. Thank you for your time. That is such a classy, nice way. And I'm not saying spend a ton of money on it. But that is, again, a differentiator that will make the difference when your flowers are on the door and the seller's trying to decide who they're going to list with, and you sent flowers. That little thing that cost you $10 might be all it takes for you to take the listing. I'm promising you guys, most sellers are just making decisions based on whether they freaking liked you or not. And if if you pre-qualified and you're professional and used a pre-listing pack and you had an organized listing presentation and they liked you and you had energy and enthusiasm, you are unbeatable. All right, Julie, let's go out to the next one. It's point number 9.
Stay out of the political danger zone. No politics, no debates, no risky topics. Keep the conversation neutral, focused, and positive. You're there to discuss their home, their goals, and how you can help, not to find out who they voted for or show an opinion about it.
Now, I will say I did have an interesting call. I will never forget this. It was a lady on a Clubhouse or I don't know what, and a very nice, sweet lady, and she was in San Francisco, and I basically said that just Julie and I are fans of saying be a Republicrat where you can you're both, you're kind of
Be
seeing both
neutral.
sides of it. And I just to Julie's points that she just made, she said you don't want to be partisan. And this gal on this Zoom or whatever it was, she said to me, well, where I am in San Francisco, if you are not a flag waving member of the Liberal Party, basically the Democratic Party, she said they won't even consider doing business with you. And so this was probably 5 or 6 years ago, before the country got really divided like it has. It's coming back together, it feels like anyway. But over the last 5 or 6 years, there definitely is a blue team and a red team, right? And so she was living in a world where where it was already blue team, red team 5 or 6 years ago. And so her experience was interesting. It kind of changed my opinion about this. But not to the point where I'm willing to give you guys different coaching on the topic. Always best to be neutral. But if you are in an area of the country where it is overtly, if you pull into someone's driveway and they've got a Trump sign in the yard, and you walk in and it's "Make America Great Again" on wearing the dogs wearing "Make America Great." You guys get my point. And you walk in there and you're talking about Kamala Harris.
When there's a gun rack.
You're probably out of sync. But or even I think a more salient way of expressing it, if you're not overtly being supportive of the thing that they obviously have so much passion for, their religion is politics, right? Then you're probably not going to take the listing too. So just be very sensitive to your environment.
Yeah.
But the best way is always being a Republicrat, because most of the country is in most cities, it's not so one side or the other. It's actually still very much 50-50. So make sure you're erring on both sides. And you'll find yourself being a lot more people when you do go about it that way. You'll find people assuming you think like them because you never took a different stance. They'll actually say, like, again, some people are so brainwashed. Politics has literally become their religion. And so they'll just naturally assume that you're a Republican too, because you never said anything that would lead them to believe that you weren't, and you get the business. And it turns
Well,
out
don't
you're
lose the
not.
listing over it. I mean, neutral is always the best policy. I guess we could say adjust accordingly. You know who you are and where you are. If this is something that, is a little bit different for you, that's okay. But in general, you should be neutral. And besides, where does that even fit into a listing presentation anyway, to talk
It
about
doesn't.
that?
Well, but the same thing, all these things, Julie, but like, talking about politics brings the energy level down. Talking about politics is definitely going to elicit emotions of fight or flight. And frankly, even if you're a proponent of their views, you're still going to find yourself dealing with a part of them that's going to be more emotional than you necessarily want to be dealing with on a listing appointment. So you're changing the vibe by talking about politics. And I would personally, we do our best to avoid politics on this podcast. It's so funny when we do talk about politics. Sometimes we do our best to give the disclaimer that we're not trying to be political. But somebody always in comments says, "Oh, I always knew they were fill in the blank, Republicans or Democrats," or I mean, come on, who cares, really? Honestly, it doesn't really make much of a difference.
Yes.
I mean, if you guys here, I'll just say this: if you guys should Google Bill Maher, Donald Trump. Just do that and listen to what Bill Maher, who I think everyone will agree is definitely a Democrat's Democrat, and he has literally had legal fisticuffs with Trump over the last like 30 years. And they're kind of friends now. And I think Bill Maher is representing how most of the country feels right now, or how they want to feel with regards to politics. So if you want to kind of just
That was a good interview.
Get a sense of where things are probably going, I'd say go and listen to Bill Maher talking about his dinner date with Trump, which is hilarious.
Yes.
All right, Julie, let's move up to point number 10, which is dress one level up.
Last but not least, dress one level up. You don't need a three-piece suit, but you do need to look put together. Dress one notch above your client, clean, polished, and professional. Your clothes reflect how you run your business. Sellers want to know that they're hiring somebody who takes the job seriously. And you can refer to the section in our best-selling book, Harris Rules. It's called Upgrade Everything. It was one of the most fun things that we did. We do work with coaching clients about this. We do before and after pictures sometimes. But your haircut, your manicure, your shoes, your watch, your handbag, all of that stuff matters. Sellers even take note of the pen that you're using to present with. So if you're also, this comes up, if you're still using an iPhone 5 or your laptop keeps crashing when you're trying to present with it, it's time to upgrade that stuff too. In the Harris Rules book, in this section about upgrading everything, we have a complete list. for you to just go down the checklist. Maybe you're rock star on most of it, but you're like, yeah, you know what? I really should be using a better pen.
And you
Little
should do that
things
every
matter.
year. You should do your upgrade everything every year. So yes, folks, I'm giving you an excuse to go shopping. Not that you needed one, but you should always upgrade everything. Julie said probably the most important thing that she said in that last section was definitely making sure you're dressing half notch or a full notch above whatever's expected in your community, which means if everybody is wearing t-shirts and shorts and flip-flops, you wear long pants and a polo shirt and a belt, right? And nice shoes. If everyone wears polo shirts, nice shoes, and a belt, and long pants, then you want to wear a tie and maybe not a jacket, and just always go a half step above how it's whatever the norm is expected. It leaves an impression, I promise you. And again, a lot of bad, really garbagey information is out there. You want to dress and look like you're the people you're trying to attract to work with you. It's not. It's a sign of respect. How you, again, showing up on time, taking your shoes off if they take their shoes off, always saying yes to what you're offered, send the pre-listing pack ahead of time, pre-qualify them, remove all the stress, and then showing up. All these things are the accumulation. Remember how we started today's show? The accumulation of all these thoughts are what going in actions, obviously. That's what's going to win you the listing consistently. I'm going to loop this back to the conversation I had with the guy. I haven't gotten his homework yet, but when I do, I'm going to have him listen to this podcast. You remember the gentleman who was having challenges because he thought essentially his best days as being a listing agent were behind him. So he wasn't taking 9 or 10 out of, listings out of the 10 appointments he'd go on, which we insist upon. If you're one of our coaching clients, you get to the point where taking 9 out of 10 is normal and anything less than that is not normal and needs to be fixed. Well, he's going to go through this checklist and all the other things that we're going to go through, and he's going to find probably dozens of little things that are easily fixed, that once he fixes them, it's not one thing. It's not this sending a pre-listing pack. I did it perfectly. I did it textbook, Tim and Julie, but I didn't take my shoes off. It's not going to be one thing like, oh, I take my shoes off, I'm good. No, that's not what we're saying. It's going to be all these little things make up the perfect listing appointment and make it so you have this sort of je ne sais quoi that nobody can quite understand. So listen, guys, thank you for keeping this #1 listen to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. Please do us a favor. And if you've not yet attended one of our masterminds that we have coming up, definitely go to joinpremiercoaching.com and sign up for I think we're doing 2 or 3 masterminds this week. So definitely want to join that. And what Julie and I are going to be doing is we're going to be setting aside 2 hours, and we're going to tell you how to overcome the 3 biggest challenges that we know that agents are having in this market. So definitely join one of our upcoming masterminds. It's joinpremiercoaching.com. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.